Welcome to this edition of Labor Vision. I'm Bob Delaney, Executive Director of the Institute for Labor Studies and Research. Labor Vision, a production of the Institute, focuses on topics of importance to working Rhode Islanders. We hope you enjoy this edition.
Welcome to Labor Vision, the at-home edition. I'm your host, Autumn Guillotte, and with me today is George Nee, President of the Rhode Island AFL-CIO, and Patrick Crowley, the Secretary Treasurer for the Rhode Island AFL-CIO. So welcome both of you. I'm excited to have you on.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
This is great. Good to be here.
So it's a new year, and with a new year comes a new legislative session in the state. And so I thought that we could talk about some of labor's legislative priorities for 2022. We had an episode like this last year, and I think it would be great to circle back and talk about some of our victories from 2021, which then leads into what we want to accomplish this year. So we had a lot that got done last year.
We did.
I don't know, what's your highlight?
We had a very good year. I'll start off with the minimum wage. We have been struggling for many years to get a path to $15 an hour on the minimum wage as opposed to do it each year. Last year we were successful in doing that. Special thanks to Senator Casada and to Representative Bennett for being the sponsors. This year, January 1st, as a result of that, the minimum wage in Rhode Island went from $11.50 to $12.25. And over the next 3 years, it'll go up to the $15 an hour. But that's also, I think it's important to let people know that unlike Massachusetts, when they got to the $15 an hour, they had to give up time and a half on Sundays and holidays. We have not done that, have no intention of doing it. And that is very significant to a lot of people who work on Sundays and holidays. In addition to that, very significant victory for the people who work in the nursing homes, established a safe staffing level as part of a great coalition led by the SEIU. That is now in effect. Unfortunately, the governor is through executive orders trying to delay it, postpone it, which we oppose. And but this is some of the strongest standards on nursing home staffing in the United States of America. So once again, Rhode Island's in the lead. We also obtained some protection for the school bus drivers, prevailing wage and 180-day guarantee work because of all the disruption in the schools. Very significant. Again, this is model legislation for the country. In addition to that, there was an increase in the TCI program, Temporary Caregivers Insurance, from 4 weeks to 5 weeks, and then from 5 to 6 next year. We'll talk about that later because we're not satisfied with that. We're going to move a little bit forward on that one. And we also, and this was, sometimes wasn't like seen as a labor bill, but we were very supportive and instrumental in getting the deal passed between IGT and Twin River. That has resulted already in a huge construction project that's underway up at Twin River and will eventually be more expansion of union members working up there. So that's a little highlight of a number of things. And then Pat, maybe you could tell the viewers what happened on the Act on Climate.
Sure. Well, George, as you remember, last year when we had this conversation about our legislative priorities, we just started talking about a new coalition that we helped found called Climate Jobs Rhode Island. And what the point of Climate Jobs Rhode Island was to bring the labor community and the environmental community together to make sure that we can jointly advocate for what's called a just transition to a carbon-free economy. And during the last legislative session, we worked hand in hand with our friends in the environmental movement and with leadership and leaders in the General Assembly in both the House and the Senate to prioritize passage of the Act on Climate. And what the Act on Climate does is set a goal to having the Rhode Island economy completely carbon neutral, carbon free by the year 2050. But it also establishes a roadmap for how to get us there. And thanks to the hard work of Senator Don Oyer, who sponsored the bill in the Senate, and Representative Lauren Carson, who sponsored it in the House, along with a number of other legislative leaders, we were able to pass the bill. And I think from a labor point of view, why this is so important is that directly within the text of the bill, it talks about how, as the state makes this transition, that working people in working class neighborhoods have to be protected and brought into the conversation about what this transition to a greener, cleaner economy looks like. And not only that, and this is one of the most important parts of this bill, it allows individual citizens of the state of Rhode Island to sue the state of Rhode Island if they're not meeting these goals. So from a worker point of view, if the state takes paths towards this goal but doesn't act in a mindful way towards working people, then individual states or even individual unions can sue the state to make sure that they get back on track and so that workers aren't left to the curb. I mean, it really is a fantastic piece of legislation. It was great that Governor McKee signed it into law. It was great that, Speaker Sakachi and Senate President Ruggiero, helped shepherd it through the legislative process. And I really think that the work that we were able to do with so many organizations and great legislative leaders is going to be an example, not just for us here in Rhode Island, but across the country.
Yeah, it is exciting. We've had Climate Jobs Rhode Island on the show a couple of times now to talk about some of their goals that they've been able to run with since the Act on Climate was passed. Last episode we talked a little bit about some of the environmental priorities, including the Green and Healthy Schools campaign. But I wonder what's next? What else is up for 2022?
Well, 2022, we do not rest on our laurels and we move forward. So there were two issues that we were disappointed with last year that we were not successful in. One was making wage theft a felony. We are going to pursue that. We've had some meetings with the Attorney General. Attorney General is fully supportive of this. And that legislation will be reintroduced and will be a top priority of the Rhode Island AFL-CIO. It's important for a number of reasons. One is there are people being cheated every day out there. And evidently, right now in Rhode Island, wage theft is a misdemeanor, which is really an insult to the people who are being cheated. Making it a felony would allow the Attorney General to bring people before the grand jury and therefore trace how this is happening up the ranks, so to speak, but would also allow for the extradition of companies that come here, cheat people, and then leave the state. And there's no way to go get them afterwards. So this will be a top priority. The Senate did pass it last year, and we're very hopeful that the House will this year. We're also unfinished business. Last year, we were fighting for a moratorium on the funding for charter schools and mayoral academies. It looks like there's going to be a shift this year to a different concept, which gets to the same goal, which is to have a cap on the spending that each community is required to make for charter schools and or mayoral academies. We have to put a stop to this, or else we're headed towards two public education systems, which is not the way we have to go. It's been very detrimental to a lot of our public school systems in the community. So that'll also be a big priority. We're going to extend or try to extend the TCI program this year for next year, instead of 6 weeks to 8 weeks, and then the following year move it to 10 weeks, and also increase the dependency benefits for the people that are receiving this very important program. We're going to extend or try to extend the concepts of the school bus drivers for the 180 days and protections to the school lunch workers, who are also working for contracted services in the schools, and in some cases got laid off. And these contractors are getting the money but they're not paying the workers. So there's an unfairness going on right now. And we also want to make sure that domestic workers get covered under the minimum wage. They were left out in 1935 when they passed the Fair Labor Standards Act because of racism. And it's about time that we get them covered. Very important group of people that have been left in the shadows. So that's a pretty good outline of some of there's always other bills, but those are some of the ones that affect a lot of our members, and our affiliates are very strong on those. And again, we have a very strong environmental agenda, and maybe Pat, you can focus on some of the other things we're working on there.
Absolutely, George. It's great timing to have this episode, Autumn, because on Saturday, we're filming here on Thursday, January 27th. This Saturday, the 29th, that will be the 1-year anniversary of Climate Jobs Rhode Island announcing our existence to the world. And if last year was a success, we're really looking to double down on that success this second year of our existence. You already mentioned the Green and Healthy Schools campaign. That's a very exciting project of Climate Jobs Rhode Island, because it really touches on a lot of the areas that we are looking to make advancements on. It involved, back in 2018, the state of Rhode Island passed a $250 million bond to help start the process of rebuilding our school infrastructure. The average age of a school building in Rhode Island is 56 years old. That's the average. That means there's a lot of schools that are even older than that. And many of the older schools are in our urban cities, in neighborhoods that are predominantly populated by people of color and immigrant communities. And we're really sending the wrong message if we don't make sure that every single person in the state of Rhode Island who's going to school has a warm, safe, and dry place to learn. Beyond that, what the Green and Healthy Schools campaign is looking to do is not only ask the voters to spend at least another $250 million. We prefer the General Treasurer's proposal for a $300 million bond question. But this year, what it's going to do is it will give local communities deeper incentives if they do two things as part of their school construction projects. Number one, they have to meet certain labor standards, and they will get better funding from the state. And for better labor standards, what that means for the labor movement is making sure that the workers who build and construct the schools are paid a prevailing wage, that the contractors who are employed to construct the new school buildings, that they utilize apprenticeships and meet some basic apprenticeship standards, so that we can help use this construction process to recruit and retain the next generation of construction workers in the state of Rhode Island. And then also that there will be feasibility studies about the use of project labor agreements. Project labor agreement is like a master contract with a number of different unions and employers to make sure that the basic standards of wages, benefits, and working conditions are at their highest, so that workers don't get exploited while they're being paid using public dollars. Excuse me. On top of that, what we're looking to do is make sure that local communities will get a deeper reimbursement from the state of Rhode Island if they meet certain environmental standards. And for us, this is kind of like a two-step jump. If you build your school so that it is much greener than it is now, maybe you put in solar panels, maybe you retrofit your heating or HVAC system, or you use light reflecting glass to make sure that the building itself retains the heat necessary. The state will reimburse you at a higher rate than if you did none of that. But even better than that, if you can build your school and demonstrate that you can build your school so that it's called net neutral, so that you are not using any more carbon-based fuel than you are producing. And in fact, if you can actually reduce your carbon footprint so that it's absolute zero, you'll get an even bigger reimbursement. So what it really means is that it is in the best interest of local communities, as they go out to design and bond for their own school buildings, they will get more bang for their buck if they do the right thing. And that's the really exciting part of how this bonding process is going to work during the Green and Healthy Schools campaign. So we're very optimistic that we can bring a proposal before the voters that will really help jumpstart our path to meeting the goals of the Act on Climate. Now, in addition to that major project, what we're really trying to get the General Assembly to adopt and hopefully the governor to sign into law is that as the state engages in this transition to a net zero economy, that projects that are built, whether it's offshore wind or onshore wind, solar projects, heating municipal buildings, retrofitting schoolhouses, whatever the case may be, that all of those projects are done meeting the best labor standards in the country. Our colleagues in Connecticut, in New York, and Illinois have made tremendous progress that through their legislative bodies, that when the states that they live in are going to be using public dollars, taxpayer dollars, to build offshore wind energy reliant services, that prevailing wages are paid, apprenticeships are used, project labor agreements are at least studied for feasibility of whether or not they make sense. And what we believe is that as Rhode Island continues to be one of the leaders in the country, especially in offshore wind, we've got to make sure that we don't leave people behind. And one of the concerns that we have as a labor movement as this transition goes on is that many of the jobs within the renewable energy sector are not paid as well as in the legacy fuel-based sectors. But we can't just trade a good union job that's using dirty fuel as its source for a clean job, but that pays a lot less than a living wage. So by joining forces with the environmental movement and passing legislation like this, we're hopeful that by bridging the gap between the workforce and the projects, we can help build a just transition to this green economy. And I'm really excited about the opportunities here. And on top of all of those things, there's other elements to this just transition through the legislative process. Last year, we had Senator Coleman and Representative Felix introduced a bill to make the public transportation system in Rhode Island, RIPTA, 100% free. And that legislation is already reintroduced in the General Assembly, and hopefully we'll make some progress on that. Addition to that, there's a piece of legislation that Senate President Ruggiero and Representative Ruggiero, no relation, has put in the House that would create a 100% renewable energy standard, which binds the state of Rhode Island to only procure for its own purposes, renewable energy to power what the state needs. And the last thing I just want to mention, because I think this kind of ties a lot of that work in together, we're really excited about having a climate literacy bill enacted into law. And what the climate literacy bill would do is imbue within the K-12 curriculum across the state of Rhode Island this understanding of not only the impact and the effects of climate change and why climate change is happening, but what people can do about it. And specifically from a labor point of view, what kind of jobs people can get helping to make our economy a cleaner and greener economy. So it's not just about someone who wants to go into the building trades and help build wind turbines or solar panels. If we're really going to build a robust green economy, we're going to need accountants, computer programmers, lawyers, physical therapy. I mean, everything that we're doing now based upon the legacy fuel industry, we're going to need people to do that in the green economy. And by having this as part of the K-12 curriculum so that guidance counselors can help guide students into this kind of career field, is just going to be one more step to bridging all of these things together.
Yeah, and I feel like that will probably ease some climate anxiety that our youth might be experiencing too.
Yeah.
So, well, you mentioned a few things that also align with some of our ARPA recommendations, like free or cost-free public transportation. That's another thing we're looking forward to in this new year. We finally get to spend some money. It's not just about cuts. We've done a few episodes over the past 2 months about different fields and sectors, priorities within the labor community for ARPA spending, but I don't know, I want to ask both of you what you might be most excited about what we could do with this money.
Well, there is a lot, we made a lot of proposals. We've already seen a few of them in the governor's proposed budget. For example, there is an allocation to restore some money to the state's unemployment insurance fund. Not the amount that we had, but that's something that at least shores that up and makes sure that the benefits for people are secure over the years. Some bond issues that we were supportive of. I think that I have a suggestion for the host of Labor Vision. I think that it would be a very good idea to do a special show on the state budget and labor's issues and priorities in the state budget. The state budget just came out last week. We're reviewing it now, but this is a very important document because not only does it raise money, but it also allocates money, and how that money is allocated is it tells you what kind of priorities that we have as a people in the state of Rhode Island. So that might be something that we could set up to do, and we're still studying it to see if some of our recommendations are in there, but if they're not in there, that doesn't mean they can't get in there, and we can review them at the same time.
Absolutely. Well, you heard it here then. That's a little teaser for a next episode we'll do.
Absolutely. One of the most exciting things, George, about the labor movement's suggestions about how to use the federal spending in the American Rescue Plan Act. To me, there's a lot. Everything in there is good, and everything in there is a priority. But the idea that we have a desperate need in Rhode Island to replace the lead pipe infrastructure for our water supply, and our friends at the Childhood Lead Action Project have been leaders on this subject for years, if not decades, trying to build awareness of how detrimental lead in water systems can really be. And in Rhode Island, there's a huge need, to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars to replace all of our pipes so that, we're not poisoning ourselves and our kids especially with the water that we are supplying to them. And I think, the federal government already has some money set aside for this that would help Rhode Island. But I think with our allocation from the federal government through the ARP and the infrastructure bill, but also just general revenue from the state of Rhode Island, we can make a real difference in, I think it would be great if we can look back in 2032, 10 years from now and say, it was 10 years ago that we made this commitment to re-engineer our water system so that it was lead-free. And today we've done it. And I think that's entirely within our reach.
I agree.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that will have a generational impact. I will plug it here right now. Labor's ARPA recommendations can be found on the Rhode Island AFL-CIO website. And also I will link them in the show notes below. They're also on our social media, so you can find it on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Is there anything else you two would like to add before we wrap up?
Well, anytime we do one of these shows, I always like to remind our viewers that the Rhode Island AFL-CIO and the labor movement likes to see ourselves as the people's lobby. And what we mean by that is that a lot of the issues and initiatives that we put forward don't just benefit union members, they benefit all the people in our state. For example, the unemployment insurance system, the TDI, TCI programs, the minimum wage, workers' compensation. Those are areas that we really monitor on a regular basis, protect, and seek to make improvements in. And when that happens, it affects all the workers in the state of Rhode Island, not just the union members. So the Rhode Island AFL-CIO, we're the people, we're your lobby, we're the people's lobby.
Absolutely. And the only thing I would add to that is, again, this idea that we are the people's lobby. We've joined forces with the Let RI Vote coalition to try to modernize our voting laws in the state. What we saw in the pandemic, especially when we were all in lockdown during the 2020 election cycle, was that when you make voting easier, more people participate. So we've been advocating through the Let RI Vote Coalition that we need to have better access to mail ballots. There shouldn't be a requirement that you create an excuse to get a mail ballot. If you want a mail ballot, you should get it. You should be able to apply for a mail ballot online. There shouldn't be a need to have two witnesses verify your signature on a mail ballot once you submit it and set it in, because that's a redundant process. We already have a very robust signature verification system in the state. So I think with our work with our friends at the Latino Policy Institute and Marcella Betancourt and her good work over there, and Jim Vincent at the NAACP, and all of the people at the Women's Fund of Rhode Island, there's a number of different partners in this coalition that are advocating for everyone, and that People's Lobby is a broad coalition, and George and I think it's fair to say we're proud to be right at the center of that work.
Absolutely. Well, I will leave information for a lot of the things that we have mentioned in this episode today in the show notes. As always, thank you both for joining us, and thank you for everyone who's watching. You never have to miss a segment. You like us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You'll get the notifications as soon as an episode comes out, and you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, Labor Vision TV 1, which will also be linked below. And you can find us at our website, laborvisionri.org. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Great
Thank
job.
you.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of Labor Vision. We appreciate your input and encourage your comments. Labor Vision can be seen on this channel 3 times each week: Tuesday at 7 p.m., Thursday at 8 p.m., and Saturday at 5 p.m.